This is the 20th in the series of the strength discussion series with Gallup certified coaches all over the world. It's been amazing. Last week, we had an amazing time. And this week is even going to be grand because Alex is is a pack of several things, and I can tell you he's doing great things at the Strength Alchemy, and we'll be unpacking that in a bit. Technical, it would be nice to have you share Alex's profile just so I can read and then bring him up, and I'm sure everyone is excited. And to the audience, I'm really excited to seeing you here. Great. Just drop in your comment and just tell us where you're logging in from. Just say hi. And not just saying hi, try and share with your friends the link. So technically, I'll also share the link so that others can share and can have as many people join this conversation, and take this on to the next level. Okay, Alex is, and so I'll just start off now, and read out Alex's profile. Alex Wong. Alex is one of the foremost coaches or champions of strength finder coaching, where he believes that every individual can harness their own innate strengths to thrive in both their career and personal lives. All right, being one of the most highly sought after strength finder coaches in Singapore, Alex has delivered his signature workshops for the VWOs, government boards, educational institutions, and faith-based institutions, transforming the lives of individuals spanning from corporate clients to youth. Amazing. Alex also loves working one-to-one, all right, with committed individuals, helping them discover their strengths, character, and passion to find a fulfilling career that serves their full potential. His unique personalized coaching system involves building your life vision and purpose, and then equipping you with the tools and support to successfully execute it. Alex is a rare breed. In 2014, he founded the Strength Finder Singapore Network to advance the strengths movement. The network aims to build a community that supports each other in their personal growth using a strength-based approach. To date, the network is the largest meetup in the world. Oh, amazing. Alex enjoys attending and serving at his church and is an active volunteer with Touch Community Services International, TCSI. He is also a hobbyist magician who performs at children's parties for friends. Ladies and gentlemen, with a virtual round of applause, please welcome Alex Wong, founder, Strength Alchemy and trainer coach on our Strength Discussion Series 20.
Thanks, Taiwo.
Great. Wow. That's a hell of a profile you got there. You got a beautiful profile, I must say. It's great to have you on this side of the Strength Discussion Series at the Strength Africa Studio. And people are saying welcome. Everyone is just saying welcome. And I'm sure we can't just wait to unpack what you have for us today. So reading, and I've gone through a few of your profile on LinkedIn and every other platform. And a few of the things that I saw that I realized that you have expertise when it comes to workplace experiences. You also deal with something I was a bit shocked with, Lego serious play facilitation. And then right. I also hear that you're an action learning coach. Okay. Please, Alex, can you unpack a bit of this just so that we know we're talking to the right person, and then we could move on to this discussion for today.
Okay, so you brought quite a few things onto the table, right? So one is I do hold a day job, a full-time job, and so one of the things that I do with my employer is we help our clients to we run integrated facilities management. And one of the things that we work on nowadays is this thing that we call the future of work, which essentially is how do we transform the workplace and environment and the way people are working into something that redefines a person's experience. So nowadays with COVID, people are changing the way that they work anyway. So a lot of people call this the future of work. And there's going to be a new norm in terms of how everyone's working, right? So whether or not you're working from home, you're going to do some hybrid work, the way that you collaborate with people will all change. So that fundamentally will change how things are in the workplace, right? So workplace experience is something that we do. When we talk about things like Lego Serious Play and action learning, there are a couple of things, right? So I can't have a conversation with people because the only one I see is Taiwo. So maybe will I be able to see their chats if they type in?
Yes, you can. You'll be able to see the chats.
Okay, I'll be very keen to know how many people right now in the audience are strengths coaches. So you can just type in the box and just let me know, your level of experience with strengths. Are you new to strengths? Have you used strengths for a while? Or are you a strengths coach? So if you can just type that in the chat box and I can see, that would be very helpful. Okay, so Ronelle says she's a new coach. Welcome to being a coach. I'd love to have a conversation with you later because you're on the panel to talk about how your experience with Gallup's coaching was like, right? Anyone else? The only person I can see is Ronelle. And
so I think Ronelle, some have taken the test. Someone says I've taken my strength test and it's very eye-opening. Most of the other people on set here are just new to the strengths, and I'm sure at the end of the day they will be convinced on discovering their strengths. So you may just proceed.
Yes. So a good number are probably new to strengths, right? But so for anyone who has been working with strengths for a while, realize that, or rather any profile for that matter, is that it's not about just having a profile. The question is, what do we do with it? Thanks, you've taken a test and you're very eye-opening. That's awesome. Okay, so one of the things that I realized is that, well, Gallup, in terms of the strengths-based development, has a process, right? So the strengths-based development process is to name, claim, and aim, right? So firstly, you need to know what your talents are. Then you need to be able to see how it works in your life, how it has brought you success, or how it could even be a weakness for you. Because essentially, even though it's called Clifton Strengths, what the report tells you is not your strengths, but your talents. And your talents are defined as a recurring pattern of thinking, feeling, or behaving that can be productively applied, right? So when we know what our strengths are, when we know what our talents are, we learn how to develop them into strengths. And essentially, that is the most important part. It's about translating that piece of paper into something that impacts the way that you perform, in the way that you relate to people, the way that you manage teams, and the way that you impact your well-being, right? So how do we translate that gap from just knowledge to transforming your life? And that's where we want to get to. So when I got certified with strengths, one of the things that I realized is that, and Ronelle, tell me whether that's true for you as well, right? One of the things that we realize is that when we learn about strengths, we become experts in the profile, which means that, if someone tells me what empathy, individualization, developer, strategic, and learner is, I can put it together, understand what it looks like, and things like that. What I found Gallup hasn't been very good at in terms of the certification, and that might have changed, right? Because I was one of the first 50 who got certified. So the way that they certify people might have evolved over the years. But during my time, you became a really, really good facilitator. You know the profile very well, but it doesn't necessarily help a person to coach very well, right? So that's where, as a coach, we continually improve ourselves in terms of how do we help people understand their talents, how do we help people to coach and group and develop. So that's the main context of it. So why Lego Serious Play? Now, one of the things that I realized after running my meetup and workshops for the longest time is this. I always ask people this question: what do you hope to take away from this meetup session or from this workshop? Most people will just reply me with, Oh, I want to develop my strengths. Oh, I want to know more about what my strengths are, right? And now, there is a fundamental problem with that statement. And I always ask them, okay, what would you like to use your strengths for? And at that question, most people cannot answer me that question, right? That's because they had no direction, they had no idea of what they want to develop those strengths for. And fundamentally, that's an issue because even the first catalyst for strengths development is this. Strengths develop best in a framework of mission, right? So if you do not know where you want to go to, you do not know what you want to apply it in, you cannot develop your strengths, right? Strengths doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you're just talking about, I just want to discover what those talent teams mean, it feels good. You feel heard. You feel like you can express yourself. It gives you a language to talk about it, which is great. That is the first step. But we need to go beyond that, right? We need to go to how do we then discover where we want to move towards? What is our mission? So one of the things that I found that Lego Serious Play is really, really good for is helping teams to get together and create a vision or help everybody to understand what those vision is, right? So when I discovered Lego Serious Play, and we learned that Lego Serious Play is essentially a methodology, right, for communication, for problem solving, for understanding or exploring a problem, right? So when we do Lego Serious Play, there's this whole hand-brain connection and the ability as you go through that to tap into your subconscious, right? So most of the time, we are aware of maybe 5 to 10% of everything that we know, right? If we knew and were conscious of everything we knew at the same time, it would overwhelm us, right? So there are different ways to kind of pull out some of these connections that we have, and building Lego is one of those ways that really, really helps. So Lego Serious Play becomes really, really useful when you want to help teams to gather together and co-create what on earth are we doing in this team? Or if you're discovering your own personal mission, then it's a different process, right? So what is your own vision and your own mission for yourself? Now, when you are clear about what that mission is, and that mission might not be 20 years, 30 years kind of a thing, right? It could be maybe more short term. It could be your vision for what you want to, where you want to be in your job in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, right? You might want to look at what does your work look like in a year's time? What do you want to change? So the clearer you are about where you want to get to, the better it is for you to start applying your talents and develop them into strengths to help you get there. So that's one reason why Lego Serious Play is really useful that I use with teams to create that level of engagement. Taiwo, you also asked me about action learning, right? So action learning is another interesting process whereby we do group coaching. Now, one-to-one coaching is one of those things that's really, really useful that we could do. But there's also a space where we talk about how do we help the teams to solve the problem, right? And in action learning, the coach actually doesn't solve the problem. The coach introduces this thing called double loop learning, which is the coach doesn't solve the problem, but the coach addresses how the team solves the problem and help the team to become more effective and better in the way that they solve the problem. And in action learning coaching, what we also do is we practice a leadership competency. But because I'm a strengths coach, I don't practice a leadership competency, I get them to practice a talent team, right? So anyone who comes in will look at, okay, how do I find an opportunity to use developer, right, as we solve this problem? How do I find a way to use strategic as we learn to solve this problem? How do I learn to use learner to solve this problem? And at the end of session, the beautiful thing about the way that we do action learning is this. Everybody gets a takeaway about what did they learn, how have they used their talent teams, and what they, in some ways, what could they do better, right? So it's a beautiful way of group coaching, and at the same time helping them to solve a problem. That problem can be a personal problem. One person brings a problem to the table, or it's a company problem, or a organization or team problem that someone brings and they want to solve, and they bring it in together. So that's one of the beautiful things about action learning. And for those of you who are interested to find out more, there's a website, WIAL, so it's the World Institute for Action Learning. if you go there, you can actually find out a little bit more about what action learning comprises, how do we do it, and also what kind of certifications is provided. And then you can see if in your own country there are people who can deliver that certification for you. Okay, so that's basically covering Lego Serious Play and action learning. So I'm going to kind of look at the chat.
Alex, I love, whilst you spoke, you took us on a few, you took us on a journey, and there seems to be a few signposts that we probably need to just see what is written there and take this discussion further. And it's been interesting. For those that are joining us, this is Alex Wong. He runs Strength Alchemy, and is a certified strength Gallup strength coach, and a Lego play facilitator. Beyond that is an action learning coach. Now, I recall whilst you spoke, you started off with the future of work, and you started to delve into workplace experiences. Just so that if anyone is joining us, that's one of the critical things at this point that most organizations are faced with, as to say, what truly then is the future of work? I want you to please throw more light as to how can we, using our strengths, okay, be better equipped to deal with the future of work.
That's interesting. I think that we look at it from different angles, right? So if you come to it from an organizational angle, again, if you're coming from a workplace environment kind of thing, you work on it in terms of what kind of events can I do, how can I transform, what do I add to the workplace to make it easier for people to work, what kind of equipment, IT do I give people so they can work from home better and things like that. So that's one angle. The other angle, when we talk about future of work, and as Gallup certified strengths coaches, you have been receiving lots of mailers from Gallup, whereby they talk about the onboarding, the working and the offboarding experience, right? So which is how does HR, how does managers come on board that affects the experience of the people. And especially with COVID, there's a lot of change that's happening. The way that people work is different. If you have Woo and you love walking around the office meeting people, and you had to work from home not meeting people, that might be terrible for you, right? So managers need to now learn how do we engage the team, people under them, so that they can work better. And also now with COVID, and there's a lot of focus in terms of well-being and mental health, right? So if you're a manager, if anyone here in the audience is a manager, these are things that you have to think about, right? So how do I now engage my team? We are working differently. We are working from home. We're working remotely. Sometimes we get together. What kind of tools do we need? What are the needs of our people? How do I make sure that they are functioning well and they have what they need and they are engaged? So now let me take it from the angle of a manager, right? Now, if you're a manager and you do one-to-ones and you speak to your team, knowing their talent teams becomes really useful, right? So for example, I just spoke about Woo, and Woo has certain needs, and you kind of know that Woo needs to meet people, they need to talk to people, and then they need to have that level of engagement, right? So some of them, especially those who have what we call more extroverted talent teams, right? So for example, communication would probably be more extroverted, right? Woo is probably more extroverted. But if you were a relator and you wish, you could talk to your best friend at work, and you can't meet them anymore, what do? Right? So as a manager, your job becomes, how do you understand what a person needs to function at their best? And the talent teams becomes a really, really good way to understand that, right? So for example, if you look at my talent teams, right, empathy, I like kind of know what people are feeling, but it's also really great if people show that they empathize with what I feel. Right? So if a manager comes in and helps me to, okay, I think for guys, sometimes people might feel it's like Yeah, guys don't talk about emotions. But you know, when you look at the talent team, it goes like, oh, this guy has empathy. Maybe you want to ask him how he feels about certain things. So I may not pour out my soul, but having a certain space to talk a little bit about what I feel might be a good space to start. Right?
Yeah.
So individualization, I do not like to be stereotyped. I like people to understand where I'm coming from. So if a person can show me that the person is understanding where I'm coming from and customizing to what my needs are, I feel really good. Right? So I'm a developer. Man, if I had people under me and I could have people to work with in the past, I could talk with them really, really well. That would help. Now, if I'm working from home, how do I do that? Let's say I do it from, let's say I do it through Zoom. How do I do that? Do I have the skill sets to do that? Right? So as a manager, one of the things that you could do then is, hey, Alex loves to develop and grow people, right? Does he have opportunity to do that? And the other thing is, does he have the tools to do that? So does Zoom help, right? And the third thing to ask is, does he know how to do that? Because maybe in the past I could do it face to face and I had a certain way of doing it. And now when I work from home, I go like, how do I do it now? It's totally different. So a lot of things changes. And as a manager, the more you know what the person's talent teams are, what the needs are, you know how to feed them. So for those of you who might be new to strengths, one of the concepts that I always introduce is that every talent team has needs, right? So I mean, I just spoke about some of them, right? Empathy has the need to be, for the emotions to be heard, right? Or at least for people to be able to empathize and know what the person is feeling, right? Individualization likes things to be bespoke, likes people to treat you as a unique individual and not one of many, right? Developer has the need to like to have help people grow, right? The opportunity to do so. So the more you understand what the needs are behind each of these talent teams, the better you can meet them as a manager. Right. So that's just one way, if you're a manager, that you could actually use your talent teams to deal with future of work and to deal with all the changes that's happening due to COVID.
Awesome. I have what Ronnie is saying so much sense. Approach them from the view of who they are. And I think that's pretty excellent. I just want to touch a bit on the empathy, all right? And I was in a class at some point, and I've soon realized that empathy beyond the strength is now a needed skill for the future. In that class, they differentiated between sympathy, empathy, and compassion. And it's because I used to, at some point think I'm quite low on empathy or relationship building under the relationship building domain. However, with my understanding now, I understand that beyond it being a strength, is also a required skill in this era. For instance, how do you want to develop marketing products, okay, or products that customers will use without having a feel of how they will feel? Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's been empathetic, all right? Not necessarily in the strength definition, but also in a skill. So for those that are listening, so there's the strength called empathy, almost like you have communication, all right? And then under different domains. But there are certain skills also that are required for the future of work in this time. And one of it is empathy. You can't come into designing without being empathetic or having a psychological feel of the buyer. Do you understand what I'm saying? But not to take this out, you also moved on to something very significant. And you said that strength, all right, cannot work in a vacuum. All right. So knowing your strength, you must name, you must aim, and then you will claim. So I need you to just take more light or shed more light into this bit as to not working in a vacuum, because we have a lot of people do tests. And I think this is also instructive to all kinds of tests. The tests are actually a tool. So please, Alex, can you unpack this just so that for the benefit of those that are listening and those that will be watching, as to how strengths cannot operate in isolation, but need to be aimed towards a mission or a vision.
Okay, so again, the Gallup process is to name, claim, and aim, right? So aim being the last one, which is how do you use it? So before you can even get there, the first thing is, do you understand what those talent teams are and how they show up? And the more you understand that, the better it is for you to develop it. Now, about strengths not existing in a vacuum is because, now just let me unpack the definition of what the strength is and what the talent is, right? So all the report reviews to you are your talent teams, not your strengths. A talent team is defined as a natural recurring pattern of thinking, feeling, or behaving that can be productively applied. So you have the way so empathy, I will kind of always try to understand what people are feeling. Sometimes I feel it, but I don't understand it. Sometimes I overdo it and become oversensitive. Right? So it's not necessarily a strength, but it's a pattern. It happens to me naturally over and over and over again, right? So developer, I will naturally see someone who needs help and I want to help that person become better, whether the person wants it or not, right? So I love to do that. It becomes a pattern for me. Now, every talent can become a strength if it's used well. So if I use my developer well, I can help someone to grow. But if I force my developer on someone who doesn't want my advice or my help, I cross a boundary, and that's a problem. So remember, talent teams, it's a pattern. It can be developed into a strength, but if used badly, it can become a weakness. It can cause you problems, right? So now, what is strengths? Strengths is defined as a consistent, near-perfect performance at a particular task. So if you don't have the particular task that you want to have constant near-perfect performance at, you have no strength. There's nothing to aim it at. So in your case, you were talking about a product, right? Maybe the strength is, how do I empathize with people so that I can develop products that people want to use? If someone can do that, I actually develop a product that people feel is relevant and that people will buy. That is a strength. So you talk about empathy. Now, most of the time, people need to differentiate between empathy as a talent team, which is a pattern, and empathy as a strength or as a skill. Now, I can have empathy as a talent team and be totally non-empathetic. Because why is that so? Empathy talent team means that I'm able to understand what someone is feeling. That doesn't mean that I need to care about what that person is feeling. I can go like, yeah, I know he's feeling that way, but yeah, it's not my problem. That's not being empathetic, right? I could know what the person is feeling, but I don't have to care about it. In fact, people who have empathy, if they have been taking on too much of people's emotions, sometimes we have to shut down or go crazy, right? Can you imagine that avalanche of emotions that goes at the end of the day, we'll be feeling so tired. So even if you read the action planning guide for empathy, sometimes it says, oh, find a ritual or routine to be able to decompress or to deal with the emotions that you've got throughout the day. So sometimes empathy needs to pull that, and make sure that we got that space. But being empathetic is the ability to help people feel like they have been heard and understood and not judged. So can I be empathetic without having empathy as a talent team? The answer is absolutely, right? We just have different forms of having it. So any one of you, if you want to be empathetic, there are certain skills of being empathetic that you could learn. You could learn about active listening. How do I listen? You could learn about reflecting, right? So reflecting is a skill whereby when someone tells you, you're able to reflect what you hear as well as the emotions behind it. So someone could go like, oh, it seems like you are feeling very anxious about this issue. Is that what's happening? I'm reflecting back to that person, right? Or you could do the skill of summarizing. That's another skill, right? So someone tells you a big long story, you summarize and say, oh, I'm hearing that you said this is what happened. Am I hearing you right? That's a skill. Now, the outcome of doing these skills well makes you empathetic to the other person, which is a strength. So that could be learner, right? In terms of how I learn and how I do it, right? Or I could be analytical. I'm very observant about facts. So when someone tells me something, I track it all in my head. I can see all the patterns and I reflect it back to the person. I summarize it back to the person, right? So it may not be very focused. I may not get what he's feeling very intuitively, but I can be empathetic. So now that's the beauty of strengths, right? Strengths doesn't tell you what you can or cannot do most of the time. It tells you how you do it, right?
How you do it,
right? So if you want to be empathetic, but you do not have empathy, how do you become empathetic? And Ronel, I love that you've come on and you've shown, your top 10 talent teams, right? So if you were to look at Ronel, how do we be empathetic? What are some of the skills that we could do? Individualization is great. Communication is great, right? You're very nuanced in the way that you can communicate with people. You're probably very particular about the words that people use, right? So a person being angry may not just be angry. The person could be outraged or peeved or upset. And people with communication have the ability to distinguish those words, right? Because nuancing becomes very important. And that's part of empathy as well, right? Because now I'm helping to hear that person, and I'm also helping that person to identify what those emotions are. So you may not have empathy, may not feel it, but the nuancing and the language comes out and becomes very important, right? So really, one of the things I used to tell my meetup group people, I kind of coined this phrase, right? It's a bit long, but hear it and maybe it makes sense to you. I said this. More often than not, you are able to do what you thought you couldn't do, just not in the way you thought you had to do it. I'll say that again. Most of the time, you are able to do what you thought you couldn't do, just not in the way you thought you had to do it. Why is that? Most of the time in this world today, we learn modeling, right? So what happens if someone does something well, we do exactly what they do. We try to clone ourselves to be the other person. Gallup talks about the salesperson, right? So went to an organization, interviewed the best salesman ever, and asked him, hey, you are such a great salesman. How do you do that? So the guy replied, oh, well, I have this long list of people, 100 names. I diligently go down the list and call every single one of them every single day. Achiever, right? Maybe discipline as well. And because of the consistency, because of the large numbers, he gets large sales. So Gallup asked them, well, how do you think you can get everybody to increase their sales? Oh, that's easy. Get everybody to do exactly what I do. Give them a list of 100 names. Get them to go down the list every single day. And if everybody just replicates what I do, voila, great sales. Now, Gallup, in all their wisdom, asked, tell me about your second best salesperson. The second best salesperson is very different. He doesn't have a list. But what he does is he builds really, really good relationships with his clients who are high net worth clients. Now, because he has such great relationship with them, they tend to buy more and they buy big. So they're big spenders. And because they have such great relationship, his net promoter score, some people say NPS, right? So he refers people to him. And because we all know when referrals happen, sales are easier because there's trust, right? We tend to trust it more and we think that, oh, well, that person is willing to refer, he's probably all right. compared to someone else who doesn't have a referral. So the second best salesperson in this team does it through relationship. So same outcome, selling, totally different approaches, totally different talent teams, totally different strengths. So now, if we replicated the second guy and said, why don't we do what the second guy did, right? Get everybody to build relationship, let them drink, talk about their families, ask about their needs, make sure you can customize the sales them. Can everybody do that? Probably not, right? But if we try to get everybody to replicate the first person or the second person, you might get hits, you might get misses, depending on what talent team is, what their temperaments is, what their personalities are. But if you learn to name, claim your talent teams, you are now able to aim it, which is, so what's aiming? Aiming is the task. The task is selling. Now, if I understand what my top 5, my top 10, my top 12 are, I can now use who I am to the best of my ability so that I can achieve that outcome, which is selling. So everybody could sell differently, right? Let me give you another example. Ronel, I'm just going to experiment with you a little bit, right? Because you had communication. I'm not sure. Do you have futuristic? You have command. Love it. And you have activator. Okay, so my guess with someone like Ronel, and tell me if I'm wrong. So as strengths coaches, we're supposed to coach, not fortune tell, I would kind of say. But so let me do an experiment, right? We do a scenario plan, right? So one of the things that probably if you were selling, what do you do? Do you sell?
Well, at this stage, I have to sell my own services, so that is hard enough. But yeah, I'm specializing more, aiming my coaching at medical practices because that's where my experience is lying. So it's actually interesting because my selling is by doing, being an activator. So actually went to the hospital manager and I said to him, I told him about what strengths-based means, because they are involved with the Q12 of Gallup. But I said to him, if they do their strengths, they can just perform so much better. And he was sort of baffled. So I said, okay, give me your team in the hospital that's not functioning that well. Let me coach them and then we see what happens. So I think that was exactly my activator kicking in, to say, let's just do it and see what happens, So it was interesting, to see that that's my way of selling it.
So you have the beautiful strength of getting people to just tiptoe over the edge and get you to buy. And the funny thing about activator is I have this quote for activator, right? I say activators are people who ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
So you aim after you fire, right? So activators really great at that. And because it's an influencing talent team, you're really great at getting people to do that with you. So you don't just ready, fire, aim. You get everybody to fire with you before they aim.
Yeah, I think that's a good description of it.
And that's beautiful, right? Because you can get people to be able to we don't need to be clear about everything before we move. We can move now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one of the strengths that you bring with Activator. And you have other talent teams as well, right? You have things like individualization and communication. So it's possible that do you tend to prefer talking to people individually, one by one, or in groups?
Well, I think my approach to the teams are, I want to speak with everyone on their own first before I get into the team. And I think that's individualization. I want to really understand every person around the table before I start with a team. So definitely the strategy that I follow for a team session.
You can see that order of how, Ronel, you are taking it, right? You take first, this is how I do it, this is my activator, right? Then I like to talk to everybody individually first, individualization, before I talk to them as a whole, as a team, communication. Because communication likes an audience, generally, right? So
Yeah.
interestingly, it doesn't always happen. Ronald, you are going down your talent team one by one. And that's really, really interesting. Now, one of the things that we could do, so if I was working with you to talk about strengths and selling, and I want to customize the way that you sell, so the strength, the aiming part, right? Not having it in a vacuum, the aiming part is selling a product. Then we would like to talk about things like, oh, how does futuristic come in? Right? Are you able to paint a future? And I mean, we talk about the great visionaries of the world, right? They are able to paint what it looks like before it happens. I like to think of these people as like Steve Jobs. He's one of those that's very visionary. He doesn't care what other people say. And then people follow him because they are inspired by him. I've heard that he's a jerk. He's terrible to work with, but he's a visionary, right? People are like, don't particularly like him, but you know, this thing that he talks about that we are going, that's exciting. And he gets people to follow him, right? So and that's a fantastic way to sell. I mean, that basically Steve Jobs sold himself and he sold Apple. He's a great presenter. And he's definitely very futuristic, right? So and then we've kind of gone around quite a bit. So if we come back to the main thing, right? We don't clone ourselves to be like other people, right? Which is why, if we come back to my statement, you can often do what you thought you couldn't do, just not in the way you thought you had to do it, right? So once you know who you are, what your talent teams are, how it shows up, you can then devise what is the best way for me to do it based on my talent teams. And that is the essence of naming, claiming, and then aiming, right? So
awesome.
I hope I answered your question about not using strengths in the vacuum and why it's so important to know who you are, what your talent teams are, so that you find a way that's best suited for you and not clone yourself to be a second-rate version of somebody else.
So let me tell you something, Alex. This is one of those sessions that I saw you activate developer. You took us, through the picture as to, hey, how do we aim, okay, after we have claimed and we've named our strengths. And I love the fact that Ronel was amply able to, put in to be used as the experiment.
Thank you, Ronel. Thank you.
Ronel, you need to come up now because you said something about blind spots, and it would be nice to have your thoughts as to some of your thoughts around what Alex was saying regarding blind spots, and then we'll start to take this home. You need to unmute yourself. Unmute. You need to unmute. Please.
There we go. I think this was my most valuable journey with strengths. Is, if you look at my strengths, you can see there's a lot of drive and extrovertism in there. My command is very strong, and it's something that can be mismanaged. And I was always struggling because people think I've got a lot of self-confidence, but I do not have self-confidence, but I come over very strong and self-assured. And then I thought, well, maybe I've got an inferiority complex or whatever. And then I discovered that blind spot insignificance, which is a precious, it is a precious talent to have, but it is something that really hindered me to excel, because it was so important to me to make an impact that as soon as I picking up easily with individualization, I pick up people are not completely happy with what I said or what I did, then I feel very discouraged. So being sensitive to those negative feedbacks, and I think it's also communication that brings that in. I realized I have to, and I'm still busy with that process, growing out of this blind spot from significance to mature it so that it can really be a powerful tool instead of a hurdle in my journey. So that's why, I'm just asking the blind spots. It's so difficult to see it yourself. You need somebody to help you find them and show them to you or open it up to you. That's that's the value of a coach then at the end of the day.
Great, great. And you know, just that was very valid, particularly how you shared it. And thank you for being vulnerable, you know, in sharing that experience. For me, I'd also, you know, battled with some of that. But there was something you mentioned, which I think is critical. And Alex had touched around that earlier on. The place for feedback and then the place to reflect. Okay. And when we come to a point where we constantly review and reflect, you know, we're better able to, you know, take the right steps or the right actions to correct some of the things that we also can, you know, decipher as being wrong or not appropriate at that point in time. But I think where a lot of people miss it is that they don't even reflect, you know, and you can't fully reflect when you haven't come into an awareness as to who you are, a conscious awareness as to who you are, you know, because by the time you know who you are easily able to relate, okay, with others with an understanding that they are also operating as they are, okay, and that's the beauty. And in fact, all through the episodes of the strength discussion, today being the 20th, we've espoused on how awareness is critical to the point where you develop it and the point where you begin to apply and, you know, ultimately move on in the continuum of mastery. But the reality is that we need to have more people come into that conscious thought. Okay, and this will be like my last questions to Alex. Then you could also take it. That how best can we bring people into this consciousness to be able to want to take a test to even discover themselves? You know, how best can we drive this movement? You know, Alex, over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the best way to become more self-aware is to join a community. Therefore, please join the Strengths Finder Singapore Network. That will be a great place for you. Okay, so in all seriousness, right? When we talk about blind spots, they're blind spots for a reason. You can't see it yourself. So we do need communities, we do need people who are able to tell us what we do not see, right? The other thing about self-awareness and knowing who you are is this. There is no end point to self-awareness. You don't become like, oh, I know everything about myself now. It doesn't happen, right? So self-awareness, the process of reflecting, knowing who I am and going, it's actually an iterative process, right? You're peeling it off layer by layer and you understand yourself more and more over time. So it's a process, very cautious of people not coming and saying that, oh, I've done that reflection thing. I know myself very well. The moment someone says that like they know everything about themselves, they stop growing, because that never happens, right? So the best way again is get people, you self-reflect, journaling helps. And for some of us, one of the things that is useful is listening to yourself, right? So we talk about empathy and, you know, active listening and things like that. Sometimes, and I've learned it when I attended a different course on strengths, was that sometimes we need to give the gift of strengths to ourselves. Empathy might be really, really good at listening to people, but we sometimes forget to listen to ourselves. Developer might love to develop someone else, but sometimes we forget to develop ourselves, right? So sometimes we just need to pause and give ourselves the gift of our own strengths, because that's sometimes what we need. Yeah, and please join my meetup group.
So can we have I love that. So Ronald, so you Ronald, push it home and then let's start to bring this to a close. We have a few people. If you have questions, please drop it in. So yes, tell us how we could get more people to become more aware or conscious or desire the need to undertake a test.
So taking the test is definitely just the starting point. Sorry, Ronald, I jumped in.
No, sorry, my phone rang, so I was distracted. I'm sorry.
So I think the question was to Ronald, right, Taiwo, about how we can increase our self-awareness.
Well, how to increase self-awareness? I think, well, at the moment for me, if you don't have a coach is supposed to help you in gaining more self-awareness. But just reading, well, I read through the manuals, what is this guide that we got in our session, the manual for managers, and in there it explained, you know, if you work with someone on your team with this and this and this talent, these are the things that you should focus on, and these are the things that could be possible blind spots for those team members. When I read through that, and I read through all of them, but especially focused on my own strengths, I picked up the blind spot of significance there, not through coaching, but through materials that was presented to me. So I think the reason why I picked it up is because I'm really trying to discern. I've got this feeling of heaviness in me when I get a no. And where does it come from? So it was a bit of self-coaching, I think, which is not a good thing, but that maybe it's listening not to what I'm saying, as Alex said, but listening to what I'm feeling, and then trying to discern, where did this come from? Why do I have this feeling? I don't want to have it. And I think that's only, to add then, Alex, not listen to your words only, but also listen to your feelings. And try and unravel them to see where it's taking you. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to add something. I do Lego. You can't see it. Okay. So one of the things that we do to listen to ourselves, sometimes we build it. And it's very interesting that after we build it and we look at it, we see something different, and it changes the perspective. So if you're interested to explore, you know, using Lego Serious Play or some method using Lego to increase that self-awareness, that's also very interesting.
Great. I love that. So we have a few people in the audience. I don't know if you all have the rights to speak now. Do you want to ask any questions? Joanna, Obey, Ife, Toli, Joshua, you have any questions? And this is on the Zoom, but I'm sure we also have people on the Facebook and YouTube. Questions, please. So, and the deliverable as business owners or as employees, we can achieve the business goal even though we are not well, even though we might not have those strengths or those, if I get that right, Alex, that common goal. Alex?
Sorry, I need you to repeat
Alex.
it. I don't see it in the chat, right? So
yeah, No. So I said we can achieve a common goal. With the way you spoke, you said we can achieve a common goal even though we have different strengths, right? And I said that's the beauty of your knowing your strengths and knowing how best to move in a bit to achieve your objective, your key performance objective. So Alex, in closing, your final words, just so that we wrap up, it's way past our usual time, but we need to close this out now. So tell us how best you think we can, fully maximize our strengths towards achieving great results, and then we will begin to wrap up. Thank you. Individually or as a team? Individually and as a team, yes.
I think the two are very different. If it's individual, it's about being, it's simple, right? It's about the naming, claiming, and aiming. We've kind of beat that horse to death. If you're talking about in a team, then what's really important is alignment. Are we talking about the same thing? Are we solving the same problem? Are we headed in the same direction? Now, many times teams don't work well. It's because they are being pulled in different directions. I was doing a workshop once. I was looking at the team grid of this particular organization, and it's very interesting. I saw 2 people who had 4 same talent teams out of 5. In most cases, we would think that these 2 people are the best of friends, but they have the biggest conflict ever. The reason is because one person is in sales, the other person is in compliance. One wants to sell, the other one to make sure that all the boxes are ticked and everything is followed and everything's aligned. So they have the same talent teams, but their directions are totally different. So they're going this way, right? Now, what happens there is that does compliance need to do their job? Yes, it is. They need to be able to make sure that the safety are met, the requirements are met, and things like that. Sales, is that important for the organization? Yeah, if the salesperson isn't bringing in the customers, the whole company will collapse because you got no revenue. So they're both important, they're both in different directions. Now the question is, how do we get these 2 who seem to be going in different directions to meet at a higher level alignment? So whether it's an organization or a team, depending on how you look at it, if you want to work well and be able to point your strengths so that you are effective, get alignment between one another. The clearer it is that everybody has alignment about where they are going and why they're doing it, the better you are able to use in a group your talent teams more effectively. So that's my closing.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you just tied it in, for us at Strength Africa, we use the word clarity. With clarity, there can be better alignment, so you know how and where not to go. Alex, I really cannot thank you enough. I'm sure the audience is just soaking in all that you've just shared. This is by far the most experimental session we've had, where we talked about strengths, but not just only talked about strengths. We demonstrated how to aim our strength, and you did that beautifully with the analogy of the sales person. I must say, this is we can't even wait to bring you back, next time, because we need to do more of this. From the team at the Strength Africa studio, we're deeply grateful for this great moment. Ronel, I'd like to say thank you. I just love the way you just come in. In fact, you're going to be a co-host if you're not careful, on this strength discussion series. Thank you, Ronel, for always coming up and bringing some light and, rooting for other coaches. We truly appreciate you. It'll be nice to just thank everyone that showed up. We are here just to constantly always reiterate the need that strength is critical to also helping you achieve greatness or claiming your extraordinary life. And I know that you'll be delighted to join us next week because we have some special guests, and I'm not going to be unveiling their details. But technical, can you please leave Alex's details on, just so that we have people that need to contact Alex directly? So we have his contacts there. Alex Wong is the founder, Strength Alchemy. He's a trainer and a coach. And there are so many things wonderful about Alex. If you need a coach, hey, hit him on. You could get him on LinkedIn. He has his website. And yes, he's actively playing on Instagram. And, if you have questions, just write straight to him. And so I would like to, at this moment, say, Alex, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we look forward to having more of you on any of our discussion series and every other platform, maybe the People's Summit and all of that. Alex, I say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And to the viewers, yes, and to our audience, I'd like to say thank you. Join us next week as we come on and learn how we can use our strengths effectively to achieve greater results. On this note, I'm saying you've got it in you, and play to your highest strength. All right, bye. See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And on the count of 5, we'll be short. 4, 3, 2, 1.